Yes, please start. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, so good evening, everyone. This is our usual weekly live catch-up meeting for getting started with competitive programming. So for those of you who are watching this live, welcome to the session. And once again, a very good evening to you. Um, if you are watching, it would be great if you could give me a +1 in the chat just to confirm that you can hear me okay. And I'll just get started with the questions that have come in through the response sheet. And if you have any questions and you're watching, then please feel free to drop them in the chat. Um, So actually, we have two people asking coincidentally more or less the same question. The first question that we have is how to improve programming logic while solving programming questions, or how to develop logic building in competitive coding. I am not completely sure if I can answer this comprehensively, but I'm assuming that this question is basically hinting at the issue of how do you come up with a solution when you are starting to work with a CP problem. Hi, Ayush, thank you. There are basically two or three key steps when you from the time that you finish reading the problem to actually submitting it and hopefully getting a accepted solution. The first step is to parse the problem, cut through the story and the fluff, and model it hopefully as something that is a concrete and an abstract question that you can actually tackle, hopefully with techniques that you have seen before. That's the first step, the modeling or the abstraction. The second one is correctly or almost correctly identifying what is the relevant technique that is involved here. And sometimes it may not be just one technique, it may be a combination of more than one techniques that are involved. And typically, the harder the problem, the more moving parts there might be in the solution. So you may need to use a fancy data structure trick somewhere where you may need to make some locally greedy choices. Maybe all of this is happening in a dynamic programming framework. So it may be a combination of more than one thing that you know. But usually in the early stages, and certainly for most of the kinds of problems that we'll be seeing in this course, most problems can be solved with usually a single paradigm. So the next step after you have managed to abstract the problem out is to identify that paradigm. And that, I think, is what you're referring to here as the programming logic, because the last step would be to, once you have a solution that you're convinced about, after suitably applying whatever paradigm it is, it could be greedy, it could be sorting, it could be dynamic programming or DSC or flows or spanning trees or whatever. But once you have figured out how to use the appropriate paradigm and you've come up with a solution strategy, the last step is to take that strategy and basically translate it to actual working program. And then there's the fourth and optional step is to basically debug the program, sort out the edge cases. And I'm saying it's optional in the sense that hopefully it's optional, but in the sense that if you got everything right the first time, you won't have to do this. But that's usually rare, again, especially at the early stages. And it's not very common that you get everything right the first time that you code up your solution. So there may be a little bit of back and forth that is involved. So there is a bit of a logic question there as well, and being able to read your code carefully and identify what's working, what's not working. Try to come up with test cases that break your code if you're getting a wrong answer output, or you might have to go back to the drawing board if you're getting a TLE, because maybe the approach that you thought was fast enough was not fast enough after all, and so on. But I think the core of it really is being able to identify the paradigm and to be able to figure out how to use it appropriately. And for this, really, the short answer is to just practice. I think expose yourself to more and more problems. If you go back and watch the live stream from last week, we had Udit Sanghi on the call, who is a silver medalist from the last couple of informatics Olympiads. And his advice, if you remember, was to just keep practicing, right? So either do it by participating in contests or and then upsolving, or just directly, whenever you have some time, just pull out a problem to work on. And if you're stuck for a considerable time, you might want to peek a little bit at the problem tags, or just start skimming through the editorial to get past the first step, which is, what paradigm should I apply? Is this a DSU problem? Is this a DP problem? Is this a greedy solution that I should be trying to construct? So just try to narrow down on that with the help of a hint, and then try to work through the details. You do this enough number of times, you will start forming subconscious patterns in your mind, and things will start to click more often than not. You'll be able to say that, oh, this is the sort of thing that I had seen in this sort of situation. This seems similar. So maybe something like this will be applicable here as well, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I think that's kind of the high level answer to that. The one word answer is to just keep practicing, get more exposure to more problems and solution strategies. Yeah. Okay. Great. So that's the first couple of questions. Is a question about not being able to submit one of the assignments, and will it affect your grade? Well, the way the grade is calculated is that your top 8 performances are counted out of 12. So no, this should not, in general, missing one assignment will not directly affect your grade or your eligibility to write the exam. So that should not be the problem. I mean, that should not be a problem in general. There's a question in Discord that's come up a couple of times about whether the deadline for assignment 5 can be extended. And typically the answer for extensions is no, as in there aren't extensions that are usually granted on request. Sometimes NPTEL, based on their own sort of statistics, decides to issue an extension. If that happens, then great, but you cannot rely on it. So for now, please work with the deadlines as stated, and then, if there's an extension, you'll come to know about it. But my experience is that will be unlikely. So please plan according to the announced deadlines. The other 2 questions that we received through the response form: are there cases when DSU may not work? Well, I mean, DSU is not it's not a paradigm that will, it's not designed clearly for every situation. I guess the scope of your question is, if something looks like a DSU problem, is there a chance that maybe DSU in its default form will not work? So I would encourage you to look at the first blog post that we have on the community blog for a problem called Experience, where you will see that DSU with path compression actually doesn't work. So you have to actually, I mean, maybe there is a way of doing it with path compression, but the more natural way to do it is to not use path compression, which is essentially an optimization that for most DSU problems, if you don't do path compression, then it will not work because it's too slow. But in this case, just because of the way the updates are designed, the nature of the problem is such that it's easier to keep track of the updates without using path compression. So that's kind of the idea. So you may need to, so it's possible that DSU in its default format, whatever is your default could be that you implemented using pointers and you apply a union by rank and path compression heuristic. So maybe this combination may not work, and you want to tweak it a little bit sometimes to see if something slightly different will work. And often you will need to keep track of extra information to get what you need to finally get to. So again, in that sense, it's not just pure DSU, but additional bookkeeping. And if you looked at the discussion on the problem war, you will see an example of this kind of substantially additional bookkeeping that you need to do. So I would say it's DSU plus a little bit of extra work that you need to do. Often when you have a problem that involves breaking things rather than putting things together, you might be tempted to say DSU will not work because DSU keeps track of things as they join as opposed to when they break apart. But again, if your queries are offline in the sense that you have all the information about all the queries up front, then often another common DSU trick is that you try to run the queries in reverse, so that instead of things falling apart, things come together, and then maybe you have to reverse the final answer, do something appropriate. So again, the other problem that we discussed in week 4 was destroying arrays. So it has an example of this kind of trick. So there are situations where it may look like, okay, it looks like DSU, but maybe not. And, you know, if you think about it a little more, with some appropriate either extra bookkeeping or modifying which combination of heuristics you want to use, or modifying how you're taking the queries. So reversing the sequence is a very popular trick. So with these things, you can make DSU work, but there will probably be situations where genuinely the problem is just not designed for a DSU solution. Maybe it's just the way the flow of the situation is, even if it has some elements of DSU. Finally, you just need to do something completely different to actually make it work. I don't have an example off the top of my head, but I'm sure there are several such. And also, I will say that many problems that can be solved with DSU can also be solved using other techniques. So this is usually not like the only way to do it, but it's definitely whenever it can be used, it's usually, I think, one of the most elegant and, you know, nicest ways of getting to some solution. So I think hopefully that kind of answers your question. I can't think of a super concrete example where DSU might not work. You need to scope the question a little bit more to be able to address that specifically. There are, of course, going to be questions for which DSU is simply not suitable, but I guess you mean within the framework of DSU-ish questions, maybe DSU doesn't work. So that's conceivable, but usually with some appropriate cleverness, you can make DSU work for you. Cool. All right, the last question was string matching using suffix arrays, is it sufficient to solve any string problem? So again, this seems like, once again, a question that is too broad for me to be able to answer completely. So with strings, there are a few different common data structures and algorithms that you want to be aware of. So suffix arrays are among the most, I think, popular ones, as also, of course, suffix trees. And there are a few standard string algorithms that you want to know pretty well if you want to, you know, be good at string problems, as you call them. Okay, so unfortunately, string problems, although they're my favorites too, they're not kind of within the syllabus of this course. So if you're really interested, maybe what I could do is pull together some pointers. There's some really nice tutorials and lecture notes that I'm aware of, so I could share those with you. So hopefully you get a look at going beyond suffix arrays. So I would say I'm not sure if suffix arrays cover everything, but they do cover, they're very popular, and they will help you to solve a lot of string problems, but I'm just not sure about, like, any string problem sounds pretty ambitious, and I think I will be a little reserved about that. But yeah, suffix arrays, great tool. So please do spend some time getting comfortable with it if that's something you're working on. It's a question from Let Me Do It in the chat. All right, so I do competitive program on online coding platforms on a regular weekly basis, and you're just curious. I really wish I had, like, if I had a little bit of time, or I should say if I had a little bit of discipline about how I manage my time, this is something I would definitely be doing. I typically end up not competing in, and not actually competing during live contests, usually just because it's constraining in terms of the time commitment. But whenever I do have some free time, if I'm not spending it reading a book or just taking a walk or sleeping, then I'm probably, this is pretty much like one of my top 5 things to do by default if I have a window of free time with nothing else to do. So yes, I do enjoy doing this for fun. So I'll probably just go to one of these platforms. CodeChef and CodeForces are the ones that I'm the most, I think those are the ones I'm the most used to. So I just probably go there and search for, a random problem and try to work on it. So yeah, unfortunately, not very systematic about this, but I do, it is definitely my idea of fun and I do it whenever I can. So yeah, hopefully if I'm a little bit more structured, I think doing contests is very fun as well. So hopefully in the future, some point that will happen too. Okay, so I don't see any other questions in the chat, although I do see that there are some of you online. So um, thanks everybody for joining. It's good to see you all. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if we'll be joined by Arjun today or we would have spent some time doing what we usually do, which is to go through hints for the weekly assignments, which are basically Arjun's brainchildren, I guess. So maybe that's something that we will have to redelegate and we'll be able to cover that either in an informal Discord stream or we'll just try to cover that over chat. If you have any specific questions from the programming assignments, I think Arjun has already answered some questions that have come up in the Discord channels. So feel free to post your queries there, and I think they will definitely get addressed as we go through the week. On the other hand, yeah, I mean, if there is enough interest, we can do an impromptu tutorial session. And I think Arjun will be happy to join on one of the other evenings in the coming days. So hopefully that will take care of the weekly programming assignments vertical. And I'm happy to just be here for a few more minutes in case anybody else has any other specific questions. I don't see any other questions in the response sheet that has been shared with us. So Shubham, Hemant, Priyanka, Ayush, and Shubhajoy, all of you, thank you for filling out the response sheet. I think hopefully, I mean, I think I did cover all of your questions and hopefully answered them to some extent. Do keep in touch and let us know if you have any follow-up questions. So, all right, sounds good. Aditi, learning Python, but many says Python is not good for competitive programming. So should I keep going or should I switch? Okay, a good question. This is something that we did try to address a little bit in the first week. So I think if you're already super comfortable with Python, it's okay to keep going, at least for the context of this course. I don't think you'll ever encounter a problem in this course or even on contests. If you're thinking of the first 3 to 4 problems in any contest, I don't know of any examples where you have a problem which will not, I mean, the solution in Python will not work, but the solution in C++ or Java will. I don't think that happens. So think there are rare situations where, C++ does give you a speed advantage, but most judges compensate for that by giving you extra time when you're submitting Python code. So by and large, I think you're covered. I think I've seen Python solutions for some pretty advanced problems, even in the final rounds of many popular contests. So I don't think it's a limitation really. One thing that you might find to be a bit of a challenge is that often the official code the code that you will find in the official repository for the course, the code that I cover in the lectures, maybe it's sometimes more C++ than Python. So in the initial weeks, I tried to keep it balanced and it was equal amounts of C++ and Python. But in, I think, the last couple of weeks, so weeks 4 and 5, I think it's been mostly C++. So although I think this community has been absolutely wonderful about sharing solutions in alternate languages, I think we don't probably have the codes yet for weeks 4 and 5, perhaps. So you may have to be a little patient as we pull out the, as we collect the alternate implementations for the problems that we discuss in the lectures. But if you have some time, then typically, once the logic is clear, I don't think there is a major challenge in translating the C++ code to Python. So that's a great exercise in my view, just to, in case you see that the code that's described in the lectures in C++, give it a shot, try to write it in Python. I think it will build your confidence. And for everything that we discussed, there's a platform that you can go and you can check your code. So I think it's a good opportunity to sort of get some practice as well. I think this is a common thing for people to say, that C++ is good for CP, and most people who are into CP tend to use C++. That's kind of the default popular programming language. But my understanding, and Arjun, who has a lot more experience with these things than I do, has also confirmed that Python should not be a roadblock. It should not be something that really deters your performance. So don't worry about that, because the thing about switching to C++ is that you're going to have to invest some time in actually learning the language. So I would suggest that once this course is over, when you don't have weekly programming assignment deadlines and other kinds of deadlines, I would say after that, just take off 2 or 3 weeks. By then you would have become a confident programmer as well. Just take off some time and learn C++. I think that's a good idea, but you just don't have to do it now. Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's so kind of you. Let me do it in the chat. You've pointed out that you have gotten responses to your questions on Discord. Actually, I should say that the Discord community has worked out really well. And I'd also like to thank everybody who has been actively engaging with us. The feeling is completely mutual. It keeps us motivated as well to see so much interest in the things that we are putting together. So I really appreciate that just as much as well. So thank you very much. And your comments totally make my day. So thanks a lot. Yeah. So just going back to Aditi, I'm not sure if you're still tuned in, but if you are, I hope that answered your question. As I said, for now, sticking to Python should be fine. You don't have to worry about getting distracted with, the whole process of learning another language, but it's something that you can do in due course. Yeah. So when hopefully you don't, as I said, if you have budgeted only a certain amount of time for tackling this course, then you may want to just focus all of it on the conceptual parts and the logic parts and implementing the solutions in a language that you're already comfortable with. I think that should be a perfectly, that strategy should be perfectly good. And since response times have come up in the chat, I'm glad that you got a response quickly. Sometimes that doesn't happen in spite of our best intentions. So if we are delayed a little bit, please bear with us. We do try to, if I'm online and I see a notification, and I usually am able to get back to it quickly, but sometimes this is not the case because of other things that are going on. So everyone who has been patient with us when we are not quick to respond, thank you. Thank you for your patience as well. All right, so as I said, I'm happy to just be online for a couple of minutes more. All right, Aditi, that's good to know. I'm glad that helped. Good luck with your CP practice time and your CP journey. I hope you have fun. And if there's anything that you're stuck with, as always, just feel free to ping us in the Discord community. If you're not already on Discord, then you can find a link to it on the SWAYAM portal or on the course website. So please do feel free to use that resource. Cool. All right. So it looks like we have hopefully addressed everything that came in advance. Thanks for your questions once again, everybody who filled out the form, and as well as everything in the chat. It was really nice interacting with you all. Thank you so much for being here live. And for those of you who are watching the recording, I hope you found this useful. Please do try to stick to the deadlines as indicated by NPTEL as of now. I think they are unlikely to be changed or extended. And the other thing, as usual, is please remain engaged with us in the Discord community, and as you have been so far. And thanks for all the support. And this is the first time that we are running this course, so there's bound to be a little bit of ups and downs. So really appreciate your patience as we work through this together. And it's of course been great fun, and we're just approaching the halfway mark next week, which is quite something. We do, I think we have also started our journey with graphs, so a lot of special things happening around this time in the course. So please keep that energy and motivation going. And what we will do now, I think, is probably wind this down here, because I don't see any new questions here in the chat, and want to also respect your time. Hopefully, you can go back to solving more problems and getting some more practice. So let's call it a day here with a huge thanks once again to everyone who joined and everyone who is watching offline as well. We will continue the conversation in Discord, and I'll see you around next week. Thanks again. All right, bye for now. So I think